to another episode of Federico Talks Watches. I guess we'll revert back to the original name for now.
Yeah, the voters have spoken. You guys win.
The voters have spoken. And actually, before we get started, we have a little announcement.
Yeah.
Which we actually mentioned on yesterday's show. We are bringing back the watch reviews on a separate YouTube channel. Now, Tim, that should be up and running maybe early next week. What do we think?
Yeah, I've got Fed working around the clock on this one, guys. So between basically driving him like a sweatshop and producing my own videos at a similar rate, I think we're going to be on Tuesday, maybe Wednesday next week.
Yeah, so Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, we'll make an announcement, of course, on this channel, but that's no excuse not to subscribe to us right now. So if you haven't, please do so you don't miss the announcement. And of course, check us out on Instagram, that's at WatchYouWant, for some great little bite-sized watch content. But of course, we're here today, and this is my show, so we're doing wristwatch checks before we do anything. And today, I'm wearing my upside down, according to the camera, Eterna Contiki World Timer. A watch that I do not wear often, but it's a lot of fun. World Time bezel, GMT, pre-Chinese purchased Eterna. So it's a little bit interesting. But of course, Tim is rocking the Hot Horology.
I'm wearing my Duomet chronograph white gold. This is the 2010 limited edition of 200 pieces. You see it's got that gorgeous little jumping seconds on there. And honestly, I wish I could show you the case back to better effect because it's probably more interesting than the front. This is the kind of watch you wish you could wear upside down sometimes.
Well, this has two separate barrels, right? One for the chrono and one for the time?
Oh, it's got two barrels. It's also got two drivetrains. The only common organ is actually the balance and the escapement.
Well, that's why when you wind the chronograph, you wind it anti-clockwise, correct?
You wind it in both directions. One winds and one ratchets.
Very, very interesting piece. And actually, we have a couple of these in stock on our website, so take a look if you want. But today, we're going to talk about something that we defer we're very different in this aspect. And that is, how do we choose to buy what we buy? Now, Tim hasn't done a state of the collection yet, but he's promised me and you guys that we will get him to do one soon.
I want to do an update to the collection and preferably start to finish up my roadmap before I come out and talk all about like why I bought which watch when. I've got great memories for each of them, and I just want to round it out before I bring it on stage.
Exactly, and as you heard, he has a roadmap. Me, I just kind of go on gut instinct. So today isn't exactly about our collections, but more how we got to the point in our collections, because everybody knows pretty much what I own. And Tim, I'll let you start. So how did you, you have a JLC only, apart from a couple of pieces, collection. Like, how did you decide to go with JLC, and how did you decide what pieces to get?
Okay, well, I think it's first important to say that just my philosophy of collecting is very intrinsic and kind of introspective. It's inwardly driven, so kind of self-propelled by my own desires and preferences and idiosyncrasies.
As it should be, though.
But I also want to express just how much, despite that, our views and preferences and our specific prejudices towards watches are really part of us and then part of the people who influence us. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, people say that I'm very inwardly driven in my collecting. I don't kind of defer to opinion or trend, but at the same time, think of how my perspective changed over time. Years ago, I read a great article by James Dowling about why a collection should be themed and not haphazard. I didn't take any particular theme from him, but I spent a long time thinking about that idea, and it really took root in my mind and became part of my philosophy of collecting. And fortunately, before I really had a chance to buy any watches, so I was starting tabula rasa.
Lucky you.
And also, it's important to remember that I was exposed to the breadth and scope of the internet and some great collector communities before I really had a chance to buy my second JLC. So I went out and I bought the Extreme World Alarm, which is a fantastic watch, but a little bit big, brash. It's the sports watch to buy, but I'm not sure it's core Jaeger LeCoultre. And by seeing the scope of what was out there, as other people brought it to me, I was able to say, you know what, in light of just how big this brand is and how big its history is, there's a lot outside the scope of what initially appealed to me.
Sure.
So just by learning, I was able to create preferences rather than being narrowly exposed to like current catalog, recent models, and nothing more. So we are kind of the sum of our intrinsic desires and the effect of the world upon us. So I admit to that, and that's how I came about my opinions.
That's very interesting because I can see a lot of what you're saying actually also applies to me. We've just put it to work in very different ways, right? So I too spent a long time studying about watches in general, and that does affect what I'm gonna buy. So I spent a lot of time on Time Zone. I know you're a big Purist Pro fan. And we do the same thing naturally. Now, unfortunately, unlike James Dowling's article, my collection is a little haphazard, but that's a reflection of me personally, I think, as well. I do a lot of things sporadically. I'm not a very organized individual. I'm not a particularly, I don't think everything out particularly well at all times. I'm very sporadic.
You're not a method man.
No, I'm not a method man. So while we do a lot of the similar things, which is we study some of our favorite brands in depth, and we spend hours and hours and days and even weeks of our lives on these websites, it seems like you pick a target and you kind of go for it. Whereas me, I always pick a target, but then I'll see a Time Zone sales section at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'll be like, Eterna Kontiki World Timer, that cheap, that's a cool watch, screw it, I'll get it. And that's just kind of how it works. Or just like my IWC engineer, I remember walking into Wempe on Wempe, or better pronunciation, on the 24th.
Yes, we are Worldly Watch you want here, and it is a German company.
It is. So Wempe for the Americans, but Wempe, is the proper way to say it. I walked in on the 24th of December, and I was working because it was retail, and 24th of December is a great day to sell watches. And I don't know why, I just had to buy something for myself. And a new IWC came in, and I'd never seen the model before, but I fell in love. And I got it like that. Now, I think your method, the result is just a fantastic collection. Because you've got one of the coolest collections I've ever seen, at least in the flesh.
Agreed. I liked it so much I bought it.
Oh, there you go. Now, my collection, I think, is very cool, but it's much more a product of the emotions I was feeling at the time.
Okay.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing. I just think it's two different philosophies, right?
And I think it's great to kind of review the whole idea of the genesis of a collection, because a lot of folks know I collect JLC. I think only folks really around the office know that JLC is not my collection theme. My collection theme is actually significant highlights of JLC's competence and history. They're all watches that I feel represent a significant part of the company's history, a core model line, or a competence, something they do really well, something completely unique like the Duomet, or so historically intrinsic like the Reverso, or characteristic of the catalog for almost the entire modern era of Jaeger LeCoultre, not just LeCoultre, like the calendar watches, and the Memovox. I've got a Grand Memovox that's a perpetual calendar that actually speaks to the long-running association. Not so much, it's not about the Memovox, and it's not about the calendar watch. It speaks to the long-running link between sister firms IWC and JLC, because you've got the IWC module in the JLC watch, and that's almost a 30-year tradition by itself. So that's actually my theme. My theme is significant milestones in the JLC history and heritage.
And I love that theme. In fact, I really wish I had the self-control to collect that way. Unfortunately, I know myself, and I just don't. So my collection theme is significant watches that have tickled Federico Ayos's fancy at some point, which is not a bad way to collect, but I do want to applaud you for the self-control and the result of that control that has come to materialize itself in what is a pretty awesome collection.
And I'll say this, Federico buys with the emotion of the moment, and that kind of invests the watch with meaning for him. For me, I buy the watch from sort of an intellectual roadmap that is kind of, trust me, they're watches. They're all emotional. But
Sure.
to create real memories and feelings and sensations that linger around a piece, for me, all of those have come in the course of my ownership of the watches. Which watch was I wearing when I first came down to Watch You Want to interview with our president Shannon Beck and meet O.J. Watley? Which watch was I wearing the first time I went to Basel World? Which watch was I wearing the first time I took Watch You Want out on a road show around the country, or when I first had dinner with someone important in the watch industry?
What watch were you wearing during your first YouTube video?
During my first, here's the funny thing. During my first Watch You Want YouTube videos, I didn't do wrist shots, and I'd actually have my watch on I'd have my watch on during the video, and I think I was wearing my MVOX too.
My first YouTube video, I was wearing my Rolex Pepsi bezel 16710, which is no longer with me. A watch I've bought twice and sold twice. More, it goes to show my kind of philosophy. But it's interesting because they're two very different perspectives. And ideally, what I'd like our viewers to comment is, how do you collect watches? I mean, be honest with yourselves. Are you very methodical? Are you like Tim, where you have a roadmap? Or, are you much more, c'est la vie, fly by the seat of your pants type stuff, which will result in a much more eclectic collection? But maybe that's the type of person you are. How do you collect watches? Let us know in the comment section below, and I'd be very interested to see what the result is.
Yeah, I think it's really going to be a mix of our two philosophies. I'd love to know if there's a third way between rigid adherence to, a pathway and kind of emotional impulse. Is it a mixture of the two, or is there something completely different that we missed?
That's a good point, actually. I'd be interested to see that.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, it's a short little episode today. But, of course, Tim, you are live tomorrow.
I am.
Is Josh joining us?
I believe it's going to be Josh or Nico. Either way, you're going to see a good show. Tomorrow we're going to cover This Week in Watches, so that's all the news that broke. Plus, we're going to do a little bit of opinions, and I think we're going to talk about hypotheticals, directions that we could take in our collections, and we're going to go heavy on your questions because we've done a lot of pre-programmed episodes recently, but for me the whole purpose of doing a live show is to interact, so we're going to be heavy on the interaction tomorrow. So tune in, 6 p.m. Eastern.
Tune in at 6 p.m. for your chance to ask Tim, Josh, or Nico, but definitely Tim's a mainstay in tomorrow's show. You can ask him live. But in the meantime, I want to thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Federico Talks Watches, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.